All right, we'll just get ourselves started, and the rest of the participants can join in as we go along. So, hello everyone. I am Sumitra Gunalan, Marketing Communications Executive at Sage. We're delighted to have you join us today at our webinar titled Rethinking Research for the AI Age with Elaine Chapman and Dr. Lee Chu Kyung, hosted by Sage. A little about Sage and some housekeeping before we get started. Sage is a global independent publisher at the forefront of research and scholarship. Our mission is building bridges to knowledge, supporting the development of ideas through the research process with scholarship that is certified, taught, and applied across all fields of social science. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for public view on our Sage Asia Pacific YouTube channel after the event. There will be a Q&A segment towards the end of the webinar for anyone who might have questions for our speakers. You can raise your questions by clicking on the Q&A section of this call right at the bottom. If we missed out on answering any of your questions during our webinar, we will endeavor to respond via an article on our Sage Asia Pacific blog. So stay tuned for that. And if you have a minute to spare after the webinar, please let us know how we did by completing a quick survey that will appear at the end. Your input will help us with upcoming webinar planning as we create and engage with speakers that highlight significant topics of discussion. Upon completing the survey, Sage will be emailing you some toll-free links to research resources for you to explore. So let's move on to our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Dr. Lee Chu Kyung, Assistant Chair for Lifelong Learning and International Relations and Program Director for the MSc in Knowledge Management at the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. Originally trained as a chemical engineer, he later specialized in information science and knowledge management. With teaching experience spanning NTU, Singapore Polytechnic, and Temasek Polytechnic, Dr. Lee now focuses on graduate courses in knowledge management, business information, and data science, and champions the belief that everyone should be able to think computationally. Joining him is Elaine Chapman. Elaine holds a first-class honors degree in psychology, receiving the Australian Psychological Society Award and a PhD in psychology. With over 35 years of experience teaching child and educational psychology, psychometrics, and research design across Monash, the University of Sydney, and the University of Western Australia, she has published extensively in high-impact journals. Elaine has also held key research leadership roles and currently serves as Deputy Head of School Research at the University of Western Australia's Graduate School of Education. Now I'll hand over the screen to Dr. Lee and Elaine, who will take us away on rethinking research for the AI age.
All right, thank you for the introduction and good afternoon, everyone. Actually, I'm on sick leave at home, so if I start coughing halfway, please excuse me. Now, let's get started. Before I begin, greetings from Singapore, where I'm based. I'm Dr. Lee, and I have been teaching for the last 34 years. For the last 25 years or so at the Nanyang Technological University. And that's our iconic building there, the kind of like the dim sum building, very iconic. All right, now let's get started. Today's presentation is about machines. All right, and we will understand AI through the lens of machines. And specifically, I'm going to talk about how and why we have machines. Now, machines started way back, essentially to help human beings. And if you look at machines, the evolution of machines, you can divide the evolution of machines to 4 stages. The first stage, essentially, machines in the first stage were there to help us amplify our strength and speed. Earths meaning human beings. All right. So, the second stage, machines really is essentially eliminated monotony. The third stage, machines helped us to calculate and help us to not make so many careless mistakes. And today we are at our 4th stage of machines. Machines that help us to create. Machines that help us to be creative. So let's go on to the first stage. Now, the first stage machines were created essentially because humans are essentially weak and slow, right? So, I'm about 70 kilograms and I have difficulty lifting something that's 20 kilograms, a sack of rice, 2 sacks of rice that's 10 kg each. So a total of 20 kilograms. I have difficulty lifting. Now, apparently a dung beetle, what you see there on the slide is a dung beetle, is able to lift weight that's 1,000 times its own weight, Now, if I could do that, I'll be able to lift kind of like an elephant. I can't do that. And that shows you how weak we are. And of course, the other thing is that we are slow. I have a rabbit, and my wife and I bring the rabbit out for a walk in the park, we are very, very careful to have the rabbit on a leash. And that's because if that rabbit goes running, I'll spend the next 2 hours or so chasing after the rabbit. And essentially, we are not just weak, we are slow. And of course, there'll be people that say that, hey, look at Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt is super fast. There's Carl Lewis, there's Jesse Owens, and they start listing out all the sprinters. But my rabbit, the difference is my rabbit didn't spend half of its life training to be fast. My rabbit is absolutely just fast, right? So here, that's the difference there. We are essentially fast and we are essentially weak and slow. And so here you have the first generation of machines that help us to overcome our weakness and lack of strength and lack of speed. Now, the second generation of machines really were invented because we really, humans, dislike repetitive work. And, I'm sure this person is not happy to be making so many muffins. I'm calling them muffins. I don't know what they are, cream cakes or whatever it is. She's made plenty of them, but I'm sure she's not terribly happy making them. All right, because it's highly repetitive, and really it's because human beings get bored really, really easily. And this is one example of a machine that helps us to overcome our distaste and dislike for boring work. A cotton engine, when you have cotton get cotton from a plant, what's embedded in the cotton is lots and lots of seeds, black seeds. And before you can use them, you have to remove the seeds. And removing seeds is highly repetitive, it's boring, it's really, really a lot of work. So, invented this machine called the cotton gin. Gin has nothing got to do with the alcohol gin. It's a short form for engine. So it's a cotton engine to remove the black seeds, right? Very quickly. And so here you have another machine that's very important. This is the Bonsec machine, and Bonsec machine is the first machine that automated the making of cigarettes. Before the Bonsec machine, cigarettes were hand rolled, right? And the Bonsec machine essentially could produce a mountain of machine rolled cigarettes in a very short time. So that's the second generation of machines that help us to, overcome our dislike for this repetitive work. The third generation of machines were essentially created because human beings are very careless, and they are especially careless when it comes to calculations. And if you have children, my children are both adults already, but if you have children, you will know that every time before the math test, you will tell them, hey, check through your work and double check and triple check and quadruple check your work. Because why are you giving them that kind of advice? Because you know that calculations are very error prone, right? And so you have this Pascaline, which doesn't operate on batteries. It's a mechanical calculator. It's very heavy, extremely heavy, about 20 kilograms or so. And you have this much smaller machine, which is also a mechanical calculator, which is called a Curta, right? Now, and so we are at our fourth generation of machines now. So the first generation, remember, were there to help us to overcome our weakness and speed. The second one, our distaste for repetitive work. The third one, our tendency to make mistakes when we calculate. And now, we have our fourth generation of machines, and that's because it's not easy to be creative. It's not easy to craft a poem. It's not easy to write lyrics for a song. It's not easy to come up with a melody. My goodness, it's not easy to write a research paper. It's not easy, and that's why we are right now. We are so happy because we have this generative AI that helps us with these creative activities. All right, it's I come from the teaching track. not from the research track. And so I use generative AI a lot for teaching purposes. I teach a lot rather than write a lot. One of the subjects, in fact, the subject that I started my teaching career with 35 years ago, was engineering mathematics. I taught engineering mathematics for some 7.5 years before going on to other subjects. And, I wonder now how engineering mathematics would be taught, because the advanced version of Gemini with DeepSeek and all these other LLMs, they have achieved gold medal standard at the International Mathematical Olympiad. If I'm not wrong, the report is online. If I'm not wrong, they solved 5 out of 6 questions correctly. And these are not your questions from your, secondary school textbooks or high school textbooks. These are questions asked at the International Mathematical Olympiad, right? I imagine they must be rather difficult, right? Now, in June this year, this happened just this year. They had kind of a secret meeting, and this secret meeting happened at Berkeley in California, where 30 of the most, kind of like famous mathematicians in the world were given a challenge. They were invited for a 2-day workshop, and they were given a challenge to come up with questions that generative AI could not answer. And the reward was this. The reward was not just the air ticket to go to Berkeley. That was already a good thing. But there was an additional reward. And that reward was $7,500 US dollars for every question they could craft. So there were 30 people. They were brought, all of them were brought to Berkeley in California, and they were asked, to craft the questions that AI could not answer. And at the end of 2 days, 48 hours, they came up with 10 questions, all of 10 questions, So, that gives you an idea. These are not your, high school teacher mathematicians. These, no disrespect to them, but, these are top level mathematicians in the top of their field, and all they could come up with after 2 days were 10 questions. So here, today really, we are at a crossroads where academia is concerned, because today, whatever we are teaching, most of it, we can actually find it online. You can find it not just online, you can find it through a LLM, through a generative AI, generative AI kind of like platform. So here, responsibility now rests on us to use it responsibly, ethically, and also responsibly. All right. So here, stage 1 and stage 2 machines, if you look at it, we've been abusing it. The school where I teach has only 4 levels. Level 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a 5th one. Yeah, okay, 5 levels. Okay. 5th level is a little bit smaller. It's kind of half a level, right? So, my office is at the 4th level. And so all I have to do is to walk up 3 levels. And what's happened is I don't walk up to 3 levels, I take the lift up. And that's actually using the lift irresponsibly. That's using the lift irresponsibly. And we will get back to that. And that's using it responsibly, because you see, if you don't use your muscles and all that, it will waste away. We'll talk about later. Calculators also, we use our calculators now without thinking, even for the simplest numbers. Cognitively, I don't know about you, but I don't remember phone numbers anymore, because all I have to do is access my phone, and after that, I don't even have to scroll, because I phone the top 5 people 90% of the time, so they are all there. I don't remember phone numbers. I don't even scroll, and that's the impact. So here for generative AI, it has shifted the responsibility of evaluation and critical curation and critical use to us. Very, very, very important. All right. And I'll give you from a teaching viewpoint, because this is this is a seminar about research, AI and research. And I'll give you the slant from research for teaching purposes, not research, not just for publication, but also for teaching purposes. That's what I use generative AI for. I use it essentially for 3 things, and I'll give it to you right now. Number 1, I use it to summarize research papers. The volume of research papers that's coming online is mind-boggling. There's a huge variety of research papers that are coming online. And what I do is I use it to summarize the research papers, and I can use it to summarize the entire research paper, or I can get ChatGPT to summarize bits and pieces of it. For example, please summarize the methodology for me. I just want to know the methodology. I want to have an idea of the methodology that was used. Right. That's the second use I put ChatGPT to is to identify blind spots. I realized that over years of teaching that I am I cannot be absolutely complete in whatever I do, whatever lesson I'm creating. But what I do is I use ChatGPT to fill up this kind of gaps in my thinking. So I do have blind spots, I admit that, but ChatGPT is there to kind of like safety net, right? It protects me from being too blind. Now, the third one is rephrasing. So my first language is not English. My first language is actually Malay. I'm from Malaysia, and so I did all my education in Malay, right up to A-levels, STPM, right? And I sometimes use ChatGPT. In fact, oftentimes I use ChatGPT to rephrase sentences that I think could be a little bit more elegant, expressed more elegantly. Right. So these are the three uses. Number one, summarize research papers, because there's too many of them. And the beauty is ChatGPT or any other generative AI tool will provide you with a summary that's between the abstract and the full article. On one end, you have the abstract, which is already a summary. On the other end, you have a full article. Now, ChatGPT gives you something in between, right? And you can be very focused. Can you just tell me the methodology or the literature review? Just summarize the results for me. Now, the other one, use number two, blind spots. Identify blind spots, right? The third one, to rephrase sentences, which I think I didn't craft elegantly enough. Now, I'm going to just quickly share with you something that I share with all my students, because my 20 minutes is coming up very, very quickly. So I'm just going to go through this bit here. All right. Now, I encourage my students to read this book. This book is by Daniel Lieberman, who is a professor at Harvard University. And he published this book in the I think it's 2015, 2014, 2013-ish. Right. So before the time of generative AI. But, one of the things that he emphasizes in this book, and I like this very much, is this: the human body works on this principle: use it or lose it. And I tell my students this, because today the responsible use of AI or any other machine rests on us. We better use it responsibly, because we don't want to land up in a situation where we are dependent on it so much that without the handphone, it comes to a situation where without the handphone, I cannot remember the phone number. Without a calculator, I don't know how to do a multiplication and so on and so forth. All right. So with that, I thank you. All right. And over to Elaine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. I really appreciate that. And Irene, would I be able to get my slides put up now, please? It looks like that might be a bit of a problem. Oh, here we go. Wonderful. Okay, could I just get it put on the first? That's wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, so hi, everybody. My name's Elaine Chapman, as you already know, and I'm currently an associate professor in the University of Western Australia's Graduate School of Education. I've got a PhD in psychology, as you've heard, and I've taught and conducted research across a range of areas in psychology and education. In terms of my teaching, I've focused primarily on the areas of research methods and analysis, and both qualitative and quantitative, and also assessment and measurement across my career. Okay. I've been doing that for some 30 years now, so that says a little bit about my age, which I didn't really want to reveal at this point, but nonetheless, my substantive research focuses upon exploring the affective processes and outcomes associated with learning environments and identifying ways to enhance the mental health of students in these environments. Today, I'm going to be following Dr. Lee and the wonderful presentation by Dr. Lee and exploring the transformative impact that artificial intelligence and generative forms of that in particular have had on our research practices. I've supervised over 160 graduate research students to completion in my career, and in recent years, I've actively encouraged my students to make appropriate use of generative AI to achieve efficiencies in their research work. Now, I'm going to say at this point, I'm not an expert in AI or in generative AI, so I'm very much in the category of being a user of these tools and a concerned and excited colleague for those of you who are out there listening to this. But what I'll be talking about today is how these can be applied in conducting research, which is an area of my expertise. So again, I'll follow Dr. Lee and I'll consider both the benefits and risks of using AI and reflect upon what all of this means. Is everybody able to hear me? Can I get somebody from marketing to say that they can hear me? Yes.
Hey, Elaine, we hear you just fine.
Okay, sorry, I just got a message saying I can't hear you. Okay, so I'll follow from Dr. Lee, as I've said, and I'll consider both benefits and risks of using AI and reflect upon, in particular, what does all this mean for universities and researchers? So based on my own research with and my work with research students, I'm going to argue that AI, when used appropriately, can enhance every stage of the research process, but without ethical guardrails, it very much does have the capacity to undermine the integrity of research. So the key message that I'd like to leave you with here is that human imagination, judgment, and ethics must remain at the core of our work, even though we should embrace AI as both a tool and an accelerant. So Irene, can we just have the second slide, please? So before I begin, I need to acknowledge that the Whadjuk Noongar people are the traditional custodians of the land on which the University of Western Australia's Crawley campus is situated. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Next slide, please. So, to start with, let's quickly reflect upon how AI adoption has grown in just a few years. So just as a caveat, I've taken these statistics from directly from Forbes, as I've indicated there, but they're certainly commensurate with or aligned with what I've seen from other bodies. So the majority of us are using AI regularly in one form or another. Most strikingly, the very vast majority of students are already using generative AI tools in their studies, and that does align with my own experiences. And I've thrown in one other figure there that I think is very important, particularly as we're thinking about how our lists of relevant graduate attributes need to change within universities. Amongst organisations, more than 3/4 have integrated AI in some capacity. And so we really need to think carefully about that. I've recently developed a proposal for a grant with colleagues at UWA in which different academics will take responsibility for exploring how AI is being used within relevant workplaces so that adjust their assessments to align with those uses, because otherwise our methods are going to very quickly become out of sync with what is happening when our graduates are going to need, or when our graduates come to leave us as they go out into the workforce. So these statistics are pretty amazing, and that's even more so when we recall that tools such as ChatGPT were released only about 3 years ago. So the uptake has been unprecedented. And the rapid adoption that we're seeing sets the context for today's discussion, that AI is not a fringe tool, it has become mainstream, and our research practices, really need, as Dr. Lee has underscored, to adapt accordingly. Next slide, please. Okay, so first, I'm going to talk briefly about what makes AI, and in particular Gen AI, so powerful as a research tool. So at its core, AI brings together several distinct capabilities or abilities. First, it can collect and digest data at a scale and speed far beyond human capacity. Second, it can now, something of a game changer, I think, engage in natural language processing, which means that it can read and generate human language with remarkable fluency. It also has the capacity to recognize patterns very quickly, seeing links in large numerical or textual databases, which opens up the possibility of generating algorithms derived from those patterns. Gen AI can also serve as an innovation catalyst because it can rapidly model scenarios and stimulate alternatives. These advances can be seen to represent something of a qualitative shift in what we can achieve in research, and also within hours, not within weeks or months, as we've seen previously. So for us as researchers, this means that we now have ready access to research assistants 24/7, which are capable of managing complexity at scale. And this can free us up to focus on what we will inherently do better, developing creative insights and making meaning from the information that we are receiving. Okay, next slide, please. So now on to, what I see as a primary benefit, and Dr. Lee also underscored this point in terms of benefits that AI holds, which is really about speed, efficiency. So as I've mentioned, speed and efficiency are the most obvious benefits of using AI in research. And because a lot of this has already been mentioned by Dr. Lee, I'll make this brief. In terms of efficiency, AI can handle large data sets and complex calculations with ease. It can also take on repetitive, as Dr. Lee commented, repetitive mundane tasks, and therefore reduce fatigue-related human errors. I'll later emphasize that this doesn't necessarily mean that we can turn our brains off, and turn off our critical faculties, and we mustn't in actual fact, but it can take on some of that sort of more mundane work and reduce errors thereby doing. It can also reveal patterns in enormous and complex databases, which would otherwise be invisible, and also test ideas and scenarios quickly. So if we recall how calculators transform mathematics education, as Dr. Lee mentioned in his own presentation, I think that what we're seeing here is a somewhat similar moment in history. None of that meant that we did not need to teach maths in schools, but what we needed to do was adapt maths education around the new availability of these tools. Next question, please. Next slide, sorry. Okay, so moving on to, how we can use research in all stages, or how we can use AI in all stages of our research. What I think is really striking is that AI can now be used in virtually every aspect of the research process. For example, first, in conducting literature reviews, Dr. Lee's already mentioned some of this, but AI can assist us to scan thousands of papers across multiple databases, as well as summarizing trends in those with remarkable speed. In the process of preparing for data collection, also, it can provide start points for things like questionnaire items and interviews, which you can then adapt to better suit your research aims. In terms of data collection as well, it can automatically capture data from digital environments such as online media platforms. Thinking in terms, or in particular, about qualitative data analysis, AI can make things more efficient from the point of view of transcription, from theme analysis, from the point of view, of transcription all the way through to theme analysis and clustering. More specifically, in terms of qualitative research, generative AI can be used for things like transcription and summarization. So tools like Whisper and Otter AI can automatically transcribe interviews and focus groups where, you can save a lot of manual effort time. It can also be used for things like initial coding with tools like NVivo, now including AI-assisted coding features that can cluster themes or suggest initial categories. Now, obviously the final interpretation has to remain human, and there is some risk of researchers foreclosing on themes from AI, but for the most obvious themes emerging, it can save you some manual work. Turning to quantitative analysis, AI can be useful from the point of view of data collection through to doing basic statistics. So again, you need to be very careful about giving your data up to AI apps, as I talk about later on. In survey designs, platforms such as Qualtrics, for example, are now experimenting with AI to generate adaptive branching questionnaires. Gen AI can also assist with statistical analysis, for example, suggesting appropriate tests and simulating data for things like power analysis. What I like most myself is that Gen AI can be used for visualization and reporting. For example, Power BI Copilot can quickly create charts and summaries, which can be very useful for early exploration. For publication, AI can now be also used for doing things like checking for adherence to journal requirements. What I've used it for a bit myself is to find, very basic level, find DOIs for references when these are a bit more obscure, and that has really saved me a lot of time as well. The key for me here is the notion of the human in the loop at all times. These are tools not to make your work, these are tools to make your work more efficient, not to do any of the real work of research for you. And they always need to be used as such. Next slide, please. Okay, and now, obviously, we need to consider some of the pitfalls of using AI in our research. So basically, the upshot here is that without ethical guardrails, the very speed of AI can actually prompt recklessness and undermine the integrity of our research. Some of the major risks associated with using AI include its tendency to hallucinate, that is, to be very confidently wrong, inventing references and even facts, and also the potential for bias. So we must always triangulate and verify everything that we get from AI sources. We also need to be very mindful of ethics in using AI in our research, because this can open us up to charges of plagiarism, copyright infringement, and generation of false data. As part of that, we also need to be ultra aware of any privacy issues in using AI. There are some very important questions around ownership of data that you upload to AI, becoming very familiar with your institutional policies around that. Otherwise, you can find yourself being accused of research misconduct. As a rule, you should not upload confidential or sensitive participant data to any AI app, and don't upload anything that you don't own exclusively either. So all in all, it's a matter of quality. Fundamentally, it's safe to assume that you should trust nothing from AI without checking. And so quality assurance always remains to be human work. Next slide, please. Okay, so moving along now to the question of how can we use AI responsibly in research? And so here, I'll give you some of my perspective on it, obviously, but there are various frameworks on this topic now, and you should do your own research into those as well. I will say first that I think you should hone your skills in providing prompts to AI apps, because better prompts will always generate better and more accurate answers. I'd go so far as to say that prompt literacy, what I would call prompt literacy, is rapidly becoming a key generic academic skill. Second, I would treat AI as an assistant. So it can help immensely, but it cannot be trusted without supervision. Third, think about the 6 Ds in using AI. That is, it can be used to discover, design, explore data, decode and draft, but you must always disclose at the end of that process. The 4 Cs model also gives us similar kind of advice: always check, correct, and cite. So these are some practical rules for maintaining research integrity. Perhaps the most important rule that I'm going to emphasize here, though, is that of the human in the loop. At every stage, the human researcher must remain central. Okay? Next slide, please. Now I'm coming to the end of my time slot here, so I'll make it a bit quick here and talk briefly about institutional implications, and particularly implications for universities against the backdrop of AI and Gen AI. Now, as I've underscored in a few of the keynotes that I've done recently, the first message is simple. Institutions cannot ignore AI. If they do, they risk being led rather than leading responsibly. Some of the key priorities that I see for universities include designing courses to foster the skilled, ethical use of AI, emphasising informed consent and transparency in all AI applications, building robust policy frameworks and security protocols around the use of AI, shifting assessment practices from memorization toward applied knowledge, process, and critical evaluation, and equipping graduates with hybrid skills that will enable them to use AI responsibly, once they actually embark on, their journeys in the workplaces. So this maps to the grant that I referred to previously in my section. I'll take a quick moment here also to talk about the topic of assessment in universities against the backdrop of generative AI, which I think is something that greatly concerns many academics today. I've written papers about this and framed them around my model of assessment, of effective assessment task design, which I've termed the aardvark model. That is, that good assessment tasks need to be aligned, authentic, reliable, developmental, valid, accessible, realistic, and constructive, that model. So generative AI introduces challenges to assessment design, to be sure. But in my view, these aren't actually generally bad challenges. And I think it introduces a lot more possibility than challenge. I'll highlight just a few of the implications of Gen AI based on my model here, given my time constraints. So one of the attributes that we want in assessment is alignment with the desired learning outcomes. So assessments now need to focus more on higher order skills like critical thinking, application and reflection, rather than knowledge, which AI can easily generate. We also want authenticity, that tasks mirror real world context. And as most organizations are now using Gen AI, we need to reflect that in our assessments. We also want our tasks to be developmental, and we can really leverage AI to support formative feedback and iterative improvement, in the assessment loop. But we also need to be concerned about validity and how to achieve this against the backdrop of AI. That is, we need to design assessments that genuinely measure the intended skills that we're trying to assess, not AI's capacity to provide polished but superficial answers. So as part of that, we need to think about how access to Gen AI might create inequities and how to re-level the playing fields for students by openly incorporating it into assessments and providing discipline-relevant training for students in its use. So I'll finish this bit up by saying that in my view, none of this is optional. Anyone interested in hearing more about my thoughts on Gen AI and assessment, please feel free to get in touch with me. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to finish up my presentation by, with a slide that says humans always, and wrap up here by returning to what I think is perhaps my key theme in my presentation, that is the role of human beings. Basically, in this new era, we need to focus upon developing our skills in what we inherently do better than AI systems, and will always do better than AI systems. I'll highlight some of those things here, but I'm sure that there are many others that the audience can think of. So first, AI lacks empathy and it can't ever fully grasp human concerns. So that absolutely needs to remain our responsibility. I've supervised students across most disciplines, and one of the key concerns that is arising across these disciplines is the need for graduates to develop the ability to think empathetically and consider the needs of their end users as well as the planet overall in designing their solutions. So this is not something that AI is likely to ever become good at from any meaningful perspective, though it can help us to consider what it looks like in terms of alternative scenarios. Second, developing suitable visions based on that empathic understanding is something that I think very much needs to remain a human thing. Only humans can imagine futures and judge what truly matters. Genuine novelty, paradigm shifts, and adaptation will also always come from humans, because while we refer to generative AI, the solutions that come from AI will always inherently be bound to what is currently available. Fundamentally, also, AI has no integrity, so we cannot ever automate our ethical responsibility, as Dr. Lee also underscored. The final call must always be human. Thank you very much. That is the end of my time.
Thank you. Wow, the session was jam-packed. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Lee and Elaine. That was a super insightful session. AI is truly rapidly transforming how research is produced and received. But given your take on this matter, it kind of gives us that sense of relief that we can still be in control and we can still leverage from this game-changing opportunity for sure. And definitely with a topic like this, we are bound to get loaded questions. So thank you everyone who has taken the time to input their questions. We will try to get as many answered in this webinar, but as mentioned earlier, we'll be taking on some questions via an upcoming blog article. But yes, let's go through some questions that we can see from here. I know Dr. Lee has been typing out some responses as he's gone along. But we'll start off with something here for Dr. Lee. Okay, this participant has asked, could you suggest how to give questions or tasks to students that would require them to use AI, but also use their own thinking capacity?
Yeah, okay. One of the subjects I teach is this subject called Foundations of Knowledge Management. And this is a subject that is laden with frameworks. So here what I do is I provide the students with a book to read. And the book this semester is The Empire of Pain. It's a very, very good book. It's called The Empire of Pain. And what I do is I ask the students to apply 2 of the frameworks on the subject matter of this book. I find that AI is not really good at this, perhaps yet. I don't know in 5 years' time, but that's how I do it right now. I give them a reading, and that's The Empire of Pain is quite a substantial read. It's about 500 pages, and I get them to view the contents of the book through the lens of through two theoretical lenses, lah.
Okay, nice. Dr. Elaine, I'm sorry, Elaine, what is there from your classes that you've sort of helped out with?
Yes. So what I've actually done in my classes is focused more on using developmental, a developmental approach. So basically, I, get them to generate and use prompts for AI, and then I get them to iteratively go through and make, changes and so on, revisions to what they're doing, based on that sort of initial prompt.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. We've got another one here. They've asked, Dr. Lee and Elaine, does AI or ChatGPT also pull information from behind the paywall database? What has been your experience?
I suspect so. Because they are able to pull behind the paywall. That means published papers, from, for example, like Sage, right? And I think so because I have got completions that suggest that they have access articles behind the paywall. Certainly JSTOR and all that. I think the older papers definitely. I don't know what is the cutoff point, but certainly behind the paywall, I think yes, it's accessed. Yeah. So LLMs is not just about material from Wikipedia. That's definitely, I'm sure of that.
Absolutely, that's my belief as well. Although I'm not sure whether or not that's actually happening because people are more and more uploading for open access. So papers are sort of getting uploaded. Whether or not that's actually they should be there or not, I'm not sure. But I think that possibly some of the information is coming from those uploaded, preprints and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, we've got another one here. So they say, I'm interested in assessments that reflect student learning when the course and assessments are entirely online. Given that it's not possible to determine when Gen AI is being used, how can we devise assessments that are trustworthy in a fully online situation? That's a good one.
Dr. Lee, do you want to go first or?
Okay, Ken. I think for us, what we have done is we have put more emphasis on now student presentations, and question and answer, and it's kind of like not just the subject matter, but we tell students also they are tested on like how they can think on their feet, how quickly they can think on their feet, which is becoming really important.
Yes. Absolutely, yeah. I've actually spoken a bit about this in some of my presentations that I've done recently, and also some of the papers that I've written about this. And I've based it, obviously, as I said earlier on my so-called aardvark model of effective assessment task design. But a little bit of history about that. I actually began writing that book, and whilst I was actually writing the book, the whole background changed on me because essentially originally it didn't really focus very much on Gen AI, and now it's a massive focus in the book because otherwise I publish it, it's redundant or outdated as soon as I've published it. But a few of the things that I recommend in that book are things like more process-oriented assessment, like I talked about previously. So we don't just say, what do you think, but why? Give us the why you think that. So, also things like code books and so on with, a history of changes that you've made. And sort of draft a final kind of developmental approaches. Reflection memos can also be quite good. Oral defences and vivas, as Dr. Lee has mooted, very good. And these can actually test a number of other things as well, beyond the use of AI, focusing on more sort of like in-class assessments and also more authentic sort of assessments that draw upon local data that probably Gen AI has not really been able to capture yet. So something that's very current and local can also be quite useful in assessing things that Gen AI can't be relied on wholly.
Yep. All right. We have one asking if you have suggestions for policy guardrails in writing research manuscripts. Does a declaration by the student researcher that AI has been used and what actions have been done using AI suffice for keeping academic and research integrity? Any disclaimers in that sense?
Well, I would say that if we're talking about research, it's a great idea. Most journals now have policies, basically, and they've got very explicit policies about what you're supposed to do in terms of acknowledging AI usage and so on. So that's something. There are, global sort of guidelines as well. The Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE, has some great material on using AI, and also consortia have gotten together and developed ethical guidelines as well for publishing, and I would have a look at those things as well. Sage, in fact, actually has some really great materials that students can access to inform them of this, like the student success modules, and they talk about things like academic integrity and so on and so forth, and I think they are terrific as a resource for that. Dr. Lee?
Yeah, I think just consult the kind of like guidelines by each journal wherever you are publishing. I think most journals have something on AI, what you can use, what you cannot use, and so on.
Yeah.
We've also got some queries that have come in by participants whereby English is not their primary language. So their question is, if they're a researcher using LLM like ChatGPT or DeepSeek, so on and so forth, and they're using it to solely improve their English tone, maybe the technicality, grammar as such, to kind of to enhance the research framework or self-conducted qualitative research. So would journals consider this as plagiarism?
I think if you're using it to rephrase sentences, you're using it to, as I mentioned earlier, like make a sentence more elegant. I don't think there are any problems. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will often now myself say, it's very, very easy. Actually, as we've come to use email and so, I started writing a bit more like I speak, and I'm skipping words. I'm skipping small words and so on and so forth. I will often put something in and say, pick up my typographical errors, and if I've missed words, please putty up the gaps and fill them in. So surface level stuff like that, things that are not that you're not claiming to have created, technicality stuff like I think that there's no ethical problem with that. But again, you need to check the the specific policies of every journal.
Yeah, and these things were available already before generative AI. For example, Grammarly,
Yes,
and tools like
exactly.
that. So
Yes.
yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, we've got participants asking, did our speakers use AI to help with the presentation preparations?
Mine, no, because actually the
Okay.
4 stages of machines are completely mine.
Okay. Nice. Just
Yes.
want to see how well we managed to slide in AI within our slides today.
I actually have to admit that at an earlier stage, when I had, a lot more content that I was planning to splice in, I had actually used it to ask one question, which is, what are the various tools that are currently available for, research purposes? I actually took that out. So the only Gen AI thing that I used, actually, I wound up taking out. But I would encourage you to have, you can use Gen AI to look at the different tools that are available for use for different purposes, and then you can get a little bit of an overview and decide whether or not you want to pursue learning about them more.
Yeah, that's right. We've got one here asking, in what ways might generative AI change how we approach research and publication moving forward? in terms of carrying out research and publication as novice researchers?
I'll leave
What's
that to
the
Elaine.
future?
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Look, I mean, yeah, what can I say? What happens is that basically every time we get access to a new tool, it shifts the goalpost, right? I mean, so what we're looking for in terms of academic research and knowledge creation, it's basically saying, look, what we're looking for, if we're going to call it novel, is the human element of it. And that's what's going to change in terms of scholarship more broadly, not just for students, but for all of us. Journals are now going to be saying, I don't want to see this stuff because anybody can generate this using AI. What I want to see is something that is truly novel in terms of the human element of that research. And, it's a little bit frightening, and a lot of colleagues are getting quite worried about it, I know, as well as students. But we should constantly be looking to reinvent ourselves. We're supposed to be knowledge creators, and so guess what? We've got an inflection point in our history, in our shared history, and I think we just need to kind of respond to that challenge.
Yeah, that's good. So someone has asked, what is your take on those tools that check the AI content in any submission, any assessment submission, and is your institution basically using that tool?
You cut out a little bit, Sumitra. So do you mind just repeating that?
Yeah. So what is your take on those tools which check AI content in any assessment submission? And is your institution using such tools?
Okay, for these tools, you see, the tools like Turnitin, they have got a little number there that indicates the AI content. Now, I'm not sure how they are how they are arriving at this number. And I think the tools have not been also transparent in stating how these numbers are generated. You see, previously, the Turnitin and all that, they would state, for example, this passage comes from this particular paper, this passage came from that particular paper. So you're on solid ground, when you say that it's plagiarism, you're really on solid ground because you can do all these checking. But AI, how was the check done? I'm not sure, and I've not read anything that explains how these AI detection tools work. So I exercise caution.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I don't have a lot of faith in those because also, they're running to keep up the whole time as well. I mean, let's face it, Gen AI is just, expanding so rapidly and growing so rapidly that it's going to be difficult to keep up with that. I would basically say we kind of need to abandon to some extent our reliance on those kinds of tools. Frankly, I mean, I think I largely teach at the master's and doctoral level, and I would expect my students to be clever enough to be able to fool something like Turnitin anyway. So I think that what we need to do is restructure the nature of the assessment task that we're using to reduce the the possibility of this happening in the first place, rather than relying upon things like Turnitin, which I think it's going to be very limited and become more so as we go on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we've got a lot of questions coming in, and we've just got 5 minutes to spare. Okay, I will wrap it up with just one more. So this is actually a sharing from a participant, and she'd like to know your thoughts on this. So she said, I'm noticing that many universities are changing their assessments to things such as visuals and mind map representations that ChatGPT has difficulty processing over written tasks. This is a welcome change for some students who dislike writing, yet for others, it is highly challenging that they are not visual thinkers. My fear is that the use of AI is being a driver for assessment choice rather than educators choosing what's the style of assessment for students to demonstrate their understanding through choice of output styles. So what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, okay. I'm reading the question because you got cut off a little bit.
Yeah.
Visuals such as mind map that ChatGPT has. They're not visual thinkers. Okay. Okay. very quickly, I don't know whether I got the question right or not, but I think, right now, changing such as, wait, hold on.
I put it on the chat, so you can have a look at it once again.
Okay.
No, it's a
Thank
bit
you
of
very
a mouthful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the thing is this, the first word processor I used was WordStar. It was in 1988. The word processor was WordStar. And I thought that was God's gift to the world. Because, for the first time, I could save my work. For the first time, I could save it at half the page point. Before that, it was the daisy wheel electric typewriter.
Oh my goodness, yes.
You had to type every page.
Yes.
You had to complete the page, and you couldn't edit and all that. So I thought, my goodness, this WordStar was absolutely fantastic. So that was 1988, and it was WordStar 4.0. And right now, if you ask me about WordStar 4.0, I'll tell you it's absolutely Jurassic. So the thing is this, the AI tools that we're using is the WordStar 4.0. I do not know any university that is not putting research, that's not conducting research on AI, and it's going to progress much faster than word processors. And I expect in 10 years it's going to be very different. And so yes, while today it cannot incorporate visuals and all that, but very quickly I'm sure it will be able to. Yeah, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Yes, for the time being, yes, probably, but it won't be the case for long. I expect lots of improvement very quickly.
Right. So I would just also say that, I kind of get that there, and I've already mooted that there can be some inequities that we're actually introducing through, the incorporation of AI into assessments. However, my emphasis has always been on the authenticity of assessment and really the alignment between the approaches that we're taking in our university courses and what we're expecting, or what graduates will be expected to do when they leave us. So, we're not just in a little insular world here. We're trying to prepare people for the workforce, to go into jobs as chemical engineers, as, accountants, and so on and so forth. And so really, I think the emphasis has got to be on the authenticity of what we're asking students to do, as opposed to looking at, visuals better, or written form is better, or essays are better, or, presentations. We got to look at that alignment and that authenticity.
Yeah, that's great. I think that there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to this one. It's just a matter of how you're planning to sort of move forward and sort of take on the learning. And whatever tool that's helping with that, like obviously as educators, you would support it fully. So yeah, that's great to know. Wow, okay, we're just short of 1 minute. That's great. And with that, our webinar comes to an end. I thank you so much, everyone who has sent in your queries. Really good questions there. And we'll try and answer as many as we can in our upcoming blog. On behalf of SAGE, we thank everyone for attending and being participative throughout the session. Once again, thank you, Elaine and Dr. Lee, for your amazing insights and keeping us on our toes for what's to come. As mentioned at the beginning of our session, kindly scan the QR code on the screen, as we'd love to hear your feedback on today's webinar. If you're looking to access free trials of any of our products, the survey form has an option for you to state your interest in that, and we will be providing toll-free links to SAGE learning resources, some of which being resources that Elaine herself has contributed to. So some great stuff for you to explore after hearing from our brilliant speakers. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day or evening, wherever you are. We will end the session now. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you, everybody.